start off with the first item of today. The first item for today is Universal has decided it needs more movies based on toy game properties, because of course Battleship and Transformers isn't enough. Heat Vision reports that the studio is in final negotiations to acquire the rights to Lego's Hero Factory line of toys. The guys who wrote, sorry, I lost my place. The guys who wrote Predators, which came out a couple years, was it last year? I think it was last year. Are on board to write the screenplay, and the toy line, for those of you wondering what can they do with the Lego toy line, actually has a mythology of its own, as the robotic characters hail from a planet where a factory pretty much spits out robotic machines whose goal is to fight intergalactic evil. So kind of similar to Transformers, if you know, deep down inside. So that's interesting. We'll have more things transform. Can you imagine? I mean, really, the whole thing about. All right, I'm just gonna say this right now. Battleship, and a lot of people complain about Battleship. How it was. It looked like a Transformers rip-off. And again, I defended it in a way that it's partially true, because Battleship was made by Hasbro, and Paramount, which of course made the Transformers movies, and they can easily just go back and be like, oh, let's just use the same special effects we used for Transformers. So, but as for the whole Lego thing, I mean, there's already all those Lego games. I think there was like a Lego TV show, like on Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon or something. So it has a fan base. I mean, they're not making it just out of the blue. It does have a fan base. And for those of you wondering, it could probably be better than Battleship. Maybe, you never know. I'm not saying Battleship was bad, by the way. If you haven't seen Battleship, I kind of do recommend it. It's enjoyable. Let's just say that it's enjoyable. Let's move on. Movies are starting to be made into TV shows, and if you heard last semester, I mentioned that they were planning on making a TV series based off of the Hannibal character from Hannibal and Silence of the Lambs. And now Lifetime is also, I didn't put this in here, but Lifetime, the channel, yes, I know, be the only time you'll hear me mention Lifetime on the show, as in regards to movie news, is making a show called Clarice, which deals with the character of Clarice, which is played by Julianne Moore and Jodie Foster in those movies. But we're not talking about those movies. We're talking about another one. Sean Durkin, who wrote and directed the film, last year's film, Martha Marcy May Maylin. Try saying that 5 times because I can't. Is trying to adapt a 10-episode TV series based off The Exorcist, which of course is regarded as one of the cult classic horror movies of today. Anyway. The Exorcist will include the events leading up to the demonic possession of young Regan McNeil, which of course is the main character, or the girl that got possessed in The Exorcist, along with the after effects of how the family deals with the trauma of the exorcism itself. It sounds interesting. It'll probably be better than the sequels for The Exorcist, but that's just me. I haven't seen Martha, the 4M name movie, but I don't know. I think it could be interesting if they take it in the right direction. And The Exorcist, at least they're not remaking it. Let's put it that way. At least they're not remaking it. Last month, Electronic Arts and DreamWorks came out that they were teaming up to bring. Sorry, it's kind of far away. Anyway, to bring the popular video game franchise Need for Speed to the big screen, and also they hired John Gantitz, who's I believe that's how you say his last name, who wrote Real Steel that came out last year, the Hugh Jackman movie with the fighting robots. For those of you who don't remember. He was hired to develop the pitch for the film, and now Variety reports that Active Valor, one of the directors for Active Valor, Scott Wall, is in talks to direct the movie. Excuse me. The plan for the film, as it's their planning is as a potential tentpole to the vein of the Fast and the Furious franchise, and with the series switching to the heist genre, that being the Fast and the Furious movies, they're looking for kind of a new racing type of street racing type of ordeal, since you know, like I just mentioned, sorry, hit myself with the mic. The Fast and the Furious movies are switching to heist films instead of street racing films. Of course, Fast and the Furious proved that, and they already said that Part 6 would be a heist film as well. So I guess DreamWorks is looking for their next big, street racing movie. I don't know why. People like the street racing aspect, I guess. So it's interesting. Anyway, let's move on. Here we go. Sony has acquired the rights to the Sprague brothers. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, by the way. They did the movie Daybreakers that came out 2 years ago. The movie that Sony picked up by the brothers is called Predestination, and Ethan Hawke, who also starred in Daybreakers, is set to star in the movie. The movie is being described as a riveting adventure through time with two detectives from a secret government time-traveling agency are designed to prevent future killers and terrorists from committing their crimes. Predestination is actually based on a classic Robert A. Heinlein short story, All You Zombies. However, it's not a zombie movie, so take that as you will. The film will start shooting early next year in Australia, which is ironically where they filmed. I don't even know if that's. I'm pretty sure I used ironically wrong. Anyway, where they filmed Daybreakers, and the brothers also directed another movie called Undead, which nobody should ever watch. It is a terrible movie. And I'm not even going to repeat the name because that's how bad it is. Yeah, Daybreakers, the best thing they've done so far. Moving on. Peter Siegel, he directed movies like Tommy Boy, Nutty Professor 2, Anger Management, 51st States, The Longest Yard, and Get Smart, is reportedly in talks to direct Vin Diesel in an action movie called The Machine for MGM Studios. Siegel is currently attached to 2 Warner Brothers pictures. One is Grudge Match, which is a boxing movie, and the adaptation of the manga Bleach. He's producing it, but he may end up directing it if things fall into place. But anyway, Siegel, he's doing all that, but Vin Diesel's also currently in post-production for Riddick 3, which is of course the sequel to the Chronicles of Riddick. That's not the official title, by the way. They haven't actually named the movie yet, which I think they should because it comes out next year. But he's doing that. Right, I lost my place again. I always lose my... Okay, right. Vin Diesel would star as the title character Machine, a humanoid creation of the Pentagon meant to be the world's ultimate weapon. 20 years after they mysteriously abandoned the project, a child finds the Machine and eventually makes friends with him. So, after the much anticipated Riddick comes out in theaters next year, Diesel will also be seen in 2 franchise films. One of them, of course, being the Fast and the Furious 6, and after that, Vin Diesel may return to a sequel to Triple X, which all of you remember Triple X, where he plays Xander Cage. Yeah, exactly. The Machine, and when Vin Diesel, I don't think a lot of people know this, so I'm going to tell you right now. The Iron Giant, if anybody remembers the Iron Giant, the big giant thing, really skinny giant too, it was an animated movie. I know Cartoon Network plays it a lot. I think it's a particular holiday where they play it all 24 hours. Anyway, it was an animated movie. It came out in the 90s, late 90s, I think. It's called The Iron Giant. And the reason I bring up The Iron Giant is because the movie sounds a lot like The Iron Giant. But also, Vin Diesel was actually the voice of the Iron Giant, which is interesting because the Iron Giant, it's not really a spoiler, never really talks in the film. So, so it looks like, and there's already jokes being made that it's just a remake of the Iron Giant. They just want to call it The Machine, but I don't know. So there you go. Let's do a couple more before we go to break. Natalie Portman is attached to star and produce in a new Western movie called Jane's Got a Gun. The story centers on a woman who must defend her farm when her outlaw husband returns home after a gunfight and on death's doorstep. With his gang coming to kill them, she seeks help of an ex-lover to defend themselves. So there you go. Natalie Portman going back to making movies after she's had her baby. So there you go. Natalie Portman will also be seen in Thor 2 when it comes out, I believe next year. Next year? I don't remember. But she's going back to make movies. Good for her. Okay. Last two stories before we go to break. Anthony Hopkins, the man from many movies like... for some reason, I just drew a blank on what Anthony Hopkins has been in. He's been in Hannibal. There you go. Hannibal, Silence of the Lambs. He was just in... he plays Odin in Thor, which is talking about Thor. There's been a bunch of other stuff. Anthony Hopkins, you can't miss Anthony Hopkins. You really can't. Anyway, is currently in negotiations to join the already star-studded cast of Red 2. For those who don't remember Red 2, or Red, because Red 2 hasn't been made yet. Red is, of course, stands for Retired Extremely Dangerous. That starred Bruce Willis, Helen Mirren, Morgan Freeman, John Malkovich, Carl Urban. Came out like 2 years ago. Was it 2 years? I think it was 2 years. I don't even remember anymore. See, I can remember everything about movies. I just don't remember the years for some reason. Anyway, Anthony Hopkins is going to get negotiations to star in Red 2. I almost said Thor 2. Hopkins would play a genius scientist who is locked up in an insane asylum, and the actors who would co-star alongside him... Wait. Oh, I see what I did there. Anyway, Hopkins will play a genius scientist locked up in an insane asylum. He will join, of course, Bruce Willis, Helen Mirren, Mary Louise Parker, and John Malkovich, as well as newcomers Catherine Zeta-Jones and Brian Hung Lee, which we mentioned on the show before. Catherine Zeta-Jones, of course, no introduction there. Brian Hung Lee, kind of new here in the States. He plays Storm Shadow in the G.I. Joe movies, which, by the way, we'll talk about G.I. Joe Retaliation later in the show. Some of you may know this, some of you may don't, but it does need to be talked about because I want to talk about it. Anyway, moving on. David Hasselhoff, the Hoff, that's right. I'm talking about David Hasselhoff. Did an interview with Movie Line and talked about the time he played Nick Fury in the 1998 TV film Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes, David Hasselhoff did indeed play Nick Fury in a TV movie. Anyway, not only was he the first Fury, but he was also seemed to think he's the best Fury, which you can see where the story's going. Here's what he had to say about the matter. He said, "I love Sam Jackson. You know, my Nick Fury was an organic Nick Fury that was written and discussed with Stan Lee before anyone got there and changed it." Sorry. Also admitting that he's actually hasn't seen the Avengers yet, which, what's wrong with you, David Hasselhoff? Nick Fury was written to be a tongue-in-cheek. He had a cigar in his mouth. He was a tough guy. He was cool, is how he described Nick Fury. It also appears that the Hoff, I'm gonna stop calling him the Hoff because I gotta take it seriously, was expected to play the character on the big screen too. Stan Lee said, "You're the ultimate Nick Fury." Avi Ard, who was he worked for Marvel Studios for a while before he decided to go away. When they bought it, sorry, said, this is what Avi Ard said to David Hasselhoff, which he's repeating: "Don't worry, you're going to be Nick Fury forever." And they lied, but that happens to me all the time. That's when you realize life isn't fair. David Hasselhoff, you have not. I'm not even gonna say anything because if I can't say anything clean, I'm not gonna say it at all. Anyway, you know what? Let's take a break. I think we should leave. We should leave that, just in the air for the time being. Anyway, we're gonna take a break. When we come back.